Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel A for Azure. In today's video, we will be diving deep into Azure Virtual Machines and exploring their capabilities. So we will see different ways of creating virtual machines, primarily through the portal, PowerShell, command line interface, and through Terraform. So with this, let's quickly jump into the demo. Here are the high levels of the demo. And as a prerequisite, you only need to have an Azure account. So if you don't have an Azure account, go back to my previous video and see how you can create a free Azure account. So let me log into my Azure portal and show you how to create a virtual machine. So now let's quickly head towards the Azure portal and log into portal.azure.com and try to create a new virtual machine. So first we have to go to the resource groups, and you can create a new resource group, or if you already have a resource group, you can go to the resource group and then you will choose an option to create a resource, and this will take you to the marketplace, and then you have to type virtual machines and hit enter. It will give you multiple options whether you want to create a pre-configured virtual machine from the marketplace or if you want to create a new blank virtual machine. So we'll choose the first option, which is Microsoft based image for virtual machines. Click OK, and then you will have multiple options here. You will see we only have currently one plan for virtual machines. We'll click on create, and now it will take us to the virtual machine creation blade. So now we will see the second way of creating the virtual machine, where we can go back to the dashboard, leave all this configuration done so far, and then go to virtual machines on the left bar. If you are not able to see this, maybe this is currently in this configuration. So you can expand this, go to virtual machines, and here you can click on create virtual machines. We have other options, but we'll go through that in the later sessions. So we'll click on virtual machines, and then again it takes you directly to this page which we saw previously through the marketplace. So this is much easier, but I wanted to show you marketplace based options so that you know if you later want to create a virtual machine from the marketplace for various different images, you have that option available. So on this page, we will create our first virtual machine. So we can see that we have multiple tabs, but on the basics tab, we have two primary details to fill, which is project details and instance details. So under project details, you need to select a subscription and a resource group. So which subscription will hold this virtual machine? I only have one, but if you have multiple, you have to make the right choice. And then resource group, whether this virtual machine will go to an existing resource group or you would like to create a new resource group. So you can fill the details of this new resource group and click on OK. It will create that new resource group. And then under the instance details, we will create the virtual machine name, which is AZ900 VM. You can name it any way you like. Then we have an option to choose region. Under region, you can choose the region which is closest to you. Maybe you have a local region available. Maybe if you're in India, you can choose India, and you see there are three regions available: Asia Pacific, Central India, South India, West India. And if you are in Europe, you definitely have a lot of options with you, which is West Europe and North Europe. So we'll choose North Europe here. And then under the availability options, we have multiple options available, which we will discuss in greater details in coming sessions. But for now, just to understand, this improves the overall availability of your virtual machine. So we'll not choose anything at the moment. Under security type, you have multiple options available again, just to improve your overall security of the virtual machine. This is also covered under the security sessions. So we'll leave it as it is for now. So under the images, you will see multiple images available here. And when you click on the drop down, it will show you the recently used images and then the marketplace images to get started. So if you have an image that you want to use listed here, you can quickly pick. For example, if I want 2019, I can quickly choose here. Or if you don't see the images in this list, you can scroll down, click on see all images, and then it will take you to the Azure marketplace where you can choose among the big list of images available here. And if you see that you're not able to search through this, you can go ahead and use filters for operating system, pricing, publisher, image type, security type, and publisher name. So with this, You can narrow down your search, make the right selection, and look at the pricing options and go back and choose your image here. Next, we will see the VM architecture selection where we have two choices, ARM64 and x64. So these options are available and grayed out based on the image that you choose. So for example, VM Server 2019 data center only allows x64. If I would have chosen CentOS, it would have given me an option to make a selection of ARM64 as well. So this selection has to be careful. We need to understand what kind of VM architecture our application requires or the workload that we are going to run on the virtual machine image will require. So we'll go back to Windows Server 2019 and again choose x64 here. So next option is run with Azure Spot Discount. So if you're looking to run this machine for a dev test environment where the availability of this machine is not an issue, you can choose this option, because when you select this option, basically what you're agreeing with Microsoft is to use their unused Azure hardware capacity at a very highly discounted rate versus your pay as you go prices. So Microsoft always have some spare capacity of hardware which is not currently provisioned or not in demand by their customers. So it's a spare capacity. So you check this option to request that spare capacity for your development and testing environment. So next option is to choose the eviction type, where capacity only means that your virtual machine will disappear or you will be evicted as soon that excess capacity disappears or that excess capacity is demanded by another customer. Or option number two is you bid for that capacity. This is a little tricky one. So basically what you're doing here is you're choosing this option and saying that I want to set a maximum price that I want to pay per hour for that instance. So if you read the description, it says when you select the price and that price is greater than the platform price and Azure has excess capacity, you will be allocated capacity. But if that price is lower than the platform price, you will be evicted from that capacity. So the trick here is when you are selecting maximum price that you want to pay per hour, you need to keep in mind the hardware cost, which Microsoft has highlighted here. So definitely your bid should be higher than this. And then when you choose the first option, you will see an amount here which is grayed out, which is 5.18328. So this amount is the average bid they are expecting. So when you choose the second option, you have to ensure that the price that you enter here is meeting the average bid and also higher than the hardware cost. So next option is to choose the eviction policy. So what happens when your instance has to be evicted? Do you want to stop and deallocate or do you want to delete the instance? Stopping and deallocate helps you recover the data from that instance. And also, if you want to reprovision that image with that disk later on, you can do that there. So, stop and deallocate makes more sense here. And then finally, you have to choose the size. Size is basically a combination of the CPU and the memory. And this pairing is already predefined by Microsoft. You cannot create a combination of your own choice. You have to choose among the available sizes listed here. And the pricing will vary based on the size that you choose. We'll go into greater details in coming session about how can you make the right selection for your different workloads. So again, we'll go back and uncheck this box. We don't need Azure Spot discount for this session. So next option is size, which we have already discussed. So we have made our selection as DS1V2 standard, which is one CPU and 3.5 gigabytes of RAM. Next is administrator account. Which account should have an admin access and admin privileges on this machine? So you have to enter a username and password, and that account will be added to the local user admin group. So I will enter Arvin and I will enter a password, confirm the password again. Next option is the inbound port rules. Do you want to allow public inbound access to this machine? So you can choose either you don't want that, or if you allow, which port should be allowed. So when you allow ports, you have an option available whether you want to allow port 80 or 43, 22 or 3389. So you can clearly see that whether you want to allow the web traffic, SSH traffic or RDP traffic. So for now, we will allow only RDP because we want to RDP into this machine. Next is licensing, where you can save up to 49% with a license you already own using Azure Hybrid Benefits. So under the cost saving session, I will explain this in greater details. So if you already have an existing license, you can check this box. I have this, so I will check this box and I will click on next. So in the next page, we will be given options to select and make our decisions related to the disk attached to this machine. So on this page, we have to decide whether we need encryption for our VM disk. So we can check this option to enable the encryption at host level. And then for operating system disk, do we need a premium or a standard disk, SSD or the HDD? So SSD is the fastest one with solid state disk versus the HDD, which is hard disk drive, which we have been using for a long time. So premium SSD is the best for production and performance sensitive workloads, and standard SSD is best for web servers, lightly used enterprise applications, and dev test. So we will use standard SSD for this demo. Next is delete the VM. Do you want to delete the disk along with the VM? So if you check this box, the disk will be deleted when the VM is deleted. If you don't check this box, when you delete the VM, disk is still on the Azure subscription resource group and it's not deleted along with the VM. So checking this option is good for your dev test environment. For production environment, definitely we want to keep this option unchecked and later decide when to remove the operating system disks for the VMs which were deleted. Next is key management. Do you want platform managed key management solution or you want a customer managed key management solution? So where if you're managing your keys, you can choose this option. But if you want the Azure platform to manage the keys, you can keep the first option. So next option is to enable ultra disk compatibility, which gives you higher throughput and higher IOPS. So this option best suits for the workloads like SAP HANA, which need really high throughput. And to allow this option, we need to also ensure that we choose a VM size which supports ultra disk compatibility. So we don't have that at the moment, so we'll not be checking this option. Next option is data disk. So if you need additional disk other than the OS disk, you can create and attach them here. So if I want, I can create and attach a new disk or attach an existing disk. So if you choose the first option where you want to create and attach a new disk, you will click on this option, which will take you to a new page where you have to enter the name, source type. So source type is, do you already have a disk or a snapshot available which you want to clone and use it here? Next is size. Do you want to keep 1024 or you want to choose among the available sizes? So we'll choose 8 gigabytes for this purpose. Next is key management. Do you again want to choose platform managed or customer management? We'll choose platform managed. And whether this disk will be shared, then you have to mention how many number of maximum shares will be allowed. And next is, do you want to delete this disk with the VM? But when you choose enable shared disk, you will not be able to delete because this disk will be shared amongst multiple VMs. So if we say no, we can check this option where it says delete disk with the VM. So if the VM is deleted, the disk will be deleted along with that. So we'll click OK here. And if you had an existing disk, you could have clicked on the second option and chosen the disk that you have, but it says currently no disk available. So we'll delete that. So here you see the LUN ID, which is 0, the name, the size, the disk type, and host caching. Do you want to do a read-only caching or read and write caching? Next option is to delete with the VM. And if you want to edit properties, you can click on this option. So once you have configured your data disks, next is advanced options where you can choose among a managed disk or unmanaged disk. So difference is managed disk is managed by Microsoft for reliability and availability, and unmanaged disk is stored into your storage account as a VSD and is customer's responsibility to manage the disk. Ephemeral OS disk is where the OS disk is stored with the virtual machine, not on the remote Azure storage account. So we'll click on next and go to the networking page where we will see the networking configuration. So on this page, you will make decisions related to the network of the VM. So we will see that we have to configure the network interface where we have to select the virtual network. So will this machine be part of an existing virtual network, or you will create a new virtual network specifically for this machine? So we can click on create new. You will see you have to choose a name for that new virtual network, the address space, and the subnet space. So address space is basically the bigger network part, and out of that address space, you will create multiple subnets, and then you will add this machine to a specific subnet. So we will go ahead and choose the default one, which is AZ 900 VM VNet, and subnet is also created default, and public IP, whether we need a public IP for this machine. So if you want to do RDP to this machine publicly, you would need a public IP. But if you don't want to give a public IP, then you need a Bastion host or a jump box to connect to this machine. So we will give a public IP for now. Then next option is the network security group. So basically this is the first layer of security for any VM on Azure. So whether you want no security group, basic or advanced. So when you choose advanced, you basically configure the security group rules. So we'll keep basic, and here we will allow the public inbound ports. So we only want to do RDP, so we will choose RDP here. And next option is to delete public IP and NIC when the VM is deleted. So if you check this box, the public IP and the NIC, the network interface, will be deleted when you delete this virtual machine. It is good for your dev test environment and when you're learning, because every resource that you created for learning purpose will delete along with the virtual machine, and you will have a lesser footprint and no cost of these instances on Azure. Next is enable accelerated networking. So this option is not available for all the virtual machines. You will see that this enables low latency and high throughput on network interface, but your virtual machine should be compatible to allow this option. Next option is load balancing, where if you want to place this virtual machine and network interface behind a load balancer, because now you're load balancing between multiple network interfaces or multiple machines, this option will come handy. If you place this virtual machine behind the existing load balancing solution, you can check this box and say whether you want to place it behind an application gateway or Azure load balancer. I understand that a lot of these details are not currently explained in the previous sessions, but we have a detailed networking session and high availability and load balancing sessions coming in future where I will explain how virtual networks are created and how you can manage them and how you can load balance on Azure. So if you have a solution, you want to make it highly available, fault tolerant and redundant, you can enable load balancing on Azure. So that's where you choose all these options. So we're not using any load balancing at the moment. So I will uncheck this box and I will click on next and go to the management page. On the management page, you will see the overall options to manage your virtual machine, like whether you want Microsoft Defender for Cloud, identity solutions, Azure Active Directory, whether you want to configure auto shutdown, backup for the machine, guest OS updates. So if we look at the identity solution, it says, do you want to enable system assigned managed identity? So basically, when you check this option, there is an identity assigned to this virtual machine, which you can add to different resources to allow access for this virtual machine. We will be talking in greater details about identity management solution in coming sessions, so you don't have to worry for now. But if you check this option, that means that you don't have to separately configure different credentials. The identity can be given access remotely. Next is Azure AD. Do you want to log in with Azure AD? So you can think of this similarly to your on-premise Active Directory, wherein if there is a user in Azure AD, he would be given access to the virtual machine through role-based access control. So role-based access control means that a user and his access. So where should he be given access is controlled through RBAC. Next is auto shutdown, where you can enable automatic shutdown for this machine. So, for example, if this machine is for dev test environment or you're doing different learning sessions on this machine, you don't want to keep it running all the time. So you can enable auto shutdown and you can select time and time zone and notification before shutdown, wherein at this time the machine will shut down and notification will be sent to you. And again, on that email, notification email, you have an option to postpone the shutdown if you like. Next is backup. Do you want to enable backup for this machine? You can check that box, choose the recovery service vault. So recovery service vault, again, we will be discussing in coming sessions, but this is where the storage data is stored. This is like a box where the backup data is stored. And then you can attach a policy. So you have standard and enhanced policies, and also you can create your own custom policy. So basically, policy means how and when the backup should be made and how the recovery will happen. So here you can choose the backup policy, but we will not do the backup for this demo purpose. I will uncheck this box. Next is guest OS updates. So do you want to enable hot patching? And how will the patch orchestration happen? Will that be automatic by operating system, Azure orchestrated, manual updates, or image default? So you can choose among these options and the patching of the operating system will take effect. So for now, we will keep it to automatic and then we'll click on next and go to the monitoring page where we will see the monitoring options. So basically here you can see that we have an option to configure alerts and diagnostics. If we check this box, what we're basically doing is we are enabling recommended default alerting rules. And on the right hand side, you will see that if the CPU goes greater than 80%, memory goes above certain threshold, IOPS, or the total network goes above the threshold, it will alert you. It will send an alert to the following email address, which is email, or if you want this to be sent to the Azure Resource Manager role or mobile app notifications, use an existing action group. You can make these choices, but there is a cost associated with this. So if you uncheck something, you will see the cost is impacted. So if I check this, the cost goes high. If I uncheck many of them, the cost goes down. So you have to be careful about making these decisions because this will impact the overall cost. So I'll cancel it for now and I will uncheck this. I don't want alerting at the moment. And then diagnostic. Do you want to enable boot diagnostics or the OS guest diagnostic for this machine? Wherein when the machine is starting, it will gather the logs and store it into your storage account or into your custom storage account location, or whether you want to disable it. I will disable it for now. And again, same for OS diagnostics, whether you want to go ahead and enable running operating system diagnostics and store it to a remote storage account. Again, this will have impact on the overall cost because it's consuming the storage. But this is good because you will have later logs to analyze and find out what really caused an issue or unavailability of a service or an operating system. So now we'll click on next and go to advanced page where you will see options related to extensions, VM applications, custom data and user data, performance, host, capacity reservations, and proximity placement groups. So if you see, we have multiple extensions available. So when you click on this option, select an extension to install, you will see the list of extensions, whether you want to install a cloud workload protection through Semantic, whether you want to install a monitoring solution, application performance monitoring for .NET based applications, whether you want something for Azure AD based Windows logins, you can make that choice and choose that extension and click on next. It will install that for you. We don't want that for the demo purpose at the moment. You'll go back to the page. In VM applications, you can select a VM application package to install. So when this VM starts, it will install that VM application as part of the initial installation. So those application files will basically be securely and reliably downloaded to the machine and deployed once the machine is ready. Similarly, custom data, you can pass a script or a configuration file, which will also be injected to the operating system. And when that operating system starts, that custom data will be loaded and your script will run and configure the operating systems. So an example of this would be, let's say you're deploying a server operating system and you would like to configure an IIS role on top of that. So that script will deploy that IIS on top of your server. Next is user data, where you can pass a script or a configuration file or other data that will be accessible to your applications. Throughout the lifetime of the virtual machine, this script and this data will be available for your applications or your users to access. So don't use user data for storing your secrets or passwords, because this will be available and they can always read from it. So if you want, you can enable this here, and then you can enter your user data here. Performance, if you would like to enhance the performance of your resources, you can enable NVMe here and check this box. So next option is host. As you can see that you can create your own host groups. So basically what this means is Microsoft gives you a capability to procure your own physical servers and host them in Microsoft data centers, where if you want in future to provision your resources or virtual machines on those dedicated hosts which are only dedicated to your subscription and not shared with other customers, you have that capability. So you can choose to deploy your resources on your dedicated host. So if we would have had those hosts, we could have chosen those from here drop down, but we don't have currently. So we'll move to the next option, which is capacity reservation. So, assuming that Microsoft runs out of capacity, wherein you go and create a new virtual machine and Microsoft says, sorry, we don't have any capacity available. So, this is the option where you can reserve the capacity in advance and tell Microsoft that probably you're planning to deploy 200 new virtual machines in this year, and you want to ensure that Microsoft always have that capacity reserved for you. So that's the option here. Next is proximity placement groups, wherein if you would like to ensure that your resources are physically closer so that there is a lower latency between those two virtual machines, you can have that capability by adding them to the same proximity placement group, where Microsoft will ensure that these two servers that you want to stick together are physically closer to each other. So now we will click on next and go to tags. So we have discussed this couple of times before. Tags gives you a capability to categorize your resources based on name value pairs, wherein you can use this name value pairs for different purposes in future. For example, doing consolidated billing based on a specific tag. So for example, we can give a tag based on the business unit. We can say business IT, and we can say business HR, or we can also choose among the list of the resources that are going to get created now with this VM, and say which resources should have this tag applied, or whether you want to apply this tag to all these resources. So that makes it easy for us to tag all these resources together. So now we will click on next and review and create. And on this final summary page, you will see the selections that you have made through all these different options and whether the overall validation has passed. So this is a pre-validation check, pre-flight validation check, wherein it will ensure that all the choices you made so far would successfully result in deploying this virtual machine in your Azure subscription. So you will see the overall pricing. So currently, this VM will cost us this much per hour, and then you will see the basic details, disk details, networking, management, monitoring, advanced tags, and then finally you have an option to click on create and create this virtual machine. Or if you later wish to deploy this machine as a code, you have an option to download template for automation. So if you click on this option, you will see ARM template, which is Azure Resource Manager template. And if you want to download this template, you can click on download, and it will basically download this as a zip file, and you can save it somewhere on your machine. And next time when you want to deploy, you can simply deploy using this template, which we will see in the coming sessions, how to deploy your resources or your virtual machine using ARM or Terraform code. So I will discuss this in greater details in coming session. But for now, I want to drop it here so that I don't confuse you with this details. I will go back and I will click on create to create my virtual machine. So when I click on create, you will see that it will submit these details and take us to the next page where it will initialize the deployment, and you will see that it has different steps that it's doing to ensure that the deployment completes successfully. But the key things to note here is all the details that you need to ensure that the deployment goes successful is here. You will see that it's deploying public IP, network security groups, virtual networks, disks, network interfaces, and virtual machine. And on the left, you will see inputs, where you will see all the inputs that you have given, and is coming from the template. Outputs, when the deployment is complete, you will see the outputs here. And then finally, you will see the template that I showed you before. So if we go back to overview, we will wait for all these steps to complete. And once this is done, we will go ahead and connect to the virtual machine and see how we can work on this virtual machine from Azure. And we can see that this was very quick. The deployment is complete, and you can see the start time, and you can see the deployment details. And if you click on operational details, you will see all the different low level details related to each step. And next, it shows what you can do next: set up auto shutdown, monitor VM health, run a script inside the virtual machine, or go to a resource or create another VM. So we'll click on go to resource, and here you can see that this is the virtual machine that we created and it's in running state at the moment. But before we go and connect to the virtual machine and I show you how do we RDP to this machine, we will go to the resource group that we created and see the resources those were created with this VM. So we see that these are the bare minimum resources required to run a virtual machine: disks, network interfaces, virtual network, network security group, public IP, and a virtual machine. So these all the things could have been created separately, or they were created along with the same deployment window. So we'll go to the machine now and see how we can connect to the machine. So you see that we have an option to connect from here, and we also have an option to connect from here on the left. So we'll click on the connect here, and now we have option to connect through RDP, SSH, or Bastion host. Bastion host is like a jump box. So we don't have a Linux machine, so we don't use this SSH option, and neither we have a Bastion host. So we'll click on RDP, and when you choose RDP, it does a pre-flight validation again, which says that if you would connect through RDP, will it work or not? So it checked whether inbound port 3389 is allowed, whether the VM's network interface has a valid public address, and whether VM is running. So all those checks are green, and we are good to go. So now we can click on download RDP, and it will download the RDP file for this machine with this public IP and the port. So we'll click on the download RDP file, and as soon you have the RDP file here, you click on that file. It will say, do you want to connect to this machine? We will say yes, and then it will ask me for my username and password. I will enter my username and the password that I gave while creating the machine and click on enter to connect to this machine. Now you're connecting to a machine on Azure over the public IP. Here it is giving me a warning that do you trust this remote identity and do you want to allow this connection from this computer? We'll say yes. And then you can see that we are connected to the machine and it's logging in with my profile. And from here, it will be like any other remote connection that you've done so far through your past experience. It's loading my user profile, and once it's loaded, I'll be logged into the desktop of this Windows Server 2019. And this first time setup takes usually a little longer by some seconds compared to the next time login. So now I'm logged in. If I go and open command prompt and check the host name, you will see this is the host name that I chose while creating the virtual machine. And if I see who is logged in here, who am I, it will say this is Arvind, the username that I created. and I am the local administrator on this machine. So this is the server manager window, which opens up automatically when you boot to a new server operating system. So now if I go to lusermgr.msc, which is the local user manager window, you will see that under the groups, under the administrators, I am part of the local administrator group. That's how I have access to this machine, and I am a local administrator of this machine. So moving forward, you can deploy your applications, change the configuration, make any workload related changes on this machine, and that will be saved and will be part of this operating system. So now we will shut down this machine and see how we can clean up the resources that we have deployed so that we successfully do the lab, see the resources, and then also remove them so that we can save on the cost. So once we shut down and go back and refresh here, you will see that the machine is still running here because at the moment the server is doing the shutdown process. So we will wait for some time and we should be able to see that this status should change to stopping and stopped and deallocated. So you see that it stopped, but when it shows stopped, that means that the cost is still incurred because the public IP is active, the NIC details are active. So what we have to do next is to click on stop here so that no cost is applicable to this virtual machine. So we'll click on stop, click on yes. So now our virtual machine is going to be stopped completely and there will be no cost related to this virtual machine on my subscription. And you will see the status will change here from deallocating to stopped deallocated. So we'll refresh here just to ensure that we have the latest status. Meanwhile, you will see that on the main overview page, you have properties where you see all the details of what you have configured on this machine, and then monitoring page where you can see the overall monitoring status of this machine like VM availability, CPU, disk bytes, and then capabilities, whether what capabilities are deployed, recommendations which Microsoft gives, and then if you want to do some sort of tutorial is also here. So now you see that it stopped deallocated. So there is no charges to this machine. We'll go back to the resource group and we want to ensure that we do the complete cleanup and there is no cost of this deployment. What we will do is we will click on delete resource group and here it will ask us the name of the resource group which I can copy up from here and paste. And if you see that some of these resources could cause problem and could stop you from deleting them, you can check this box which says apply force delete for selected virtual machine and virtual machine scale sets inside this resource group. So we'll do that. We'll click on delete and slowly it will start to remove all the resources from this resource group and also delete the resource group after that. So you will see here that is currently showing under the notification that is deleting the resource group A for Azure. So we'll wait for a couple of minutes. You will see currently we have 1 to 7 records, and if we refresh, it should go down slowly. And let's click on refresh again. And you see that all the records are removed. And if we go back to resource groups, you will see that A for Azure is not available here. So this concludes the first part of creating virtual machine through the portal session. In my coming session, I will walk you through the creation of virtual machine using command line interface and PowerShell. And after that, we will also use the infrastructure as a code tools like ARM and Terraform, and then automate them using DevOps. For now, I thank you again for watching you for Azure, and I'm looking forward to welcoming you in my future sessions.